Hello and welcome to Inspired Caregiver. My name is Michelle. I created this podcast because I was the primary family caregiver for both of my grandmothers for a collective 7 years, which meant I handled everything from car keys to managing their households, dealing with all this stuff, and then ultimately end-of-life care. And I've worked in senior living as a result of that experience for over 7 years. So this podcast is designed to share with you insights, tips, tricks, and inspiration through those experiences, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inspired Caregiver. Hello, caregivers. Welcome back to this two-part series on why I stopped drinking, which was part 1 last week. And then today we're picking up where we left off with how I stopped over drinking. I mentioned in the last episode that I do not identify as an alcoholic. In my mind, I have some ideas about what that means to be an alcoholic. And for me, I felt like I just had a really bad habit and I was a chronic over drinker. I never went to work inebriated. I never drove my kids drunk. I never drove drunk. So I don't know. I had in my head this whole list of what it means to be an alcoholic, and I just don't identify as that. So when I wanted to stop drinking, I didn't know where to turn. Like all I knew about was Alcoholics Anonymous. And so the very, very first thing I did, actually, to back up a little bit, was I wrote down all of the reasons I drank. Everything that I could think of. I just did a full thought download, a mind dump onto a piece of paper, and it actually took 2 pieces of paper because it turns out there are just a lot of things to celebrate in life, and there are a lot of things to be stressed out about in life. And I mean, it was little things like I survived that skate party. So I deserve to have some wine on a Friday night after going to that elementary skate party, which is like one of the most overstimulating things and environments you can possibly be in my opinion. So little things like that. It's a beautiful day. We're going to sit by the fire pit. We're camping. Someone passed away. Someone annoyed me. My kid left a sock on the floor. Like every single reason I could think of why I would drink or be inclined to go open my bottle of wine, I wrote it down. And that was really eye-opening for me. I mean, it was very enlightening to see all the reasons times my whys that I would be inspired to pick up a glass of wine. And I'll tell you, as a caregiver, there's a lot of frustrations and there's a lot of things that made me feel sad or angry. And those were definitely on my list as to why I was drinking. So after I had my list of why I was drinking, that is what I really didn't know where to turn next. And I at one point years back had mentioned to my doctor, I think I drink too much. And her recommendation was to go to an AA meeting. So I did that. I found a meeting that was close by to my house and showed up. And I'll tell you, really making that drive to that place to show up for that meeting took extraordinary effort. And I'm really, really, really proud of myself for doing it because that was hard. Um, it was really hard. So I go to the meeting and it was like classic basement of a church meeting. Really sweet group, nice people were there. And it was after work one day. So I I went there after work one day. And people were sharing their stories, and I didn't identify, I could not relate to some of the things people were sharing, but the emotion that they felt was something that I connected very deeply with. You know, the range of emotions that people were feeling and then using alcohol to manage was something that really struck me and connected with me. So I went to about 6 different meetings at different times in different places with different groups of people just to try a bunch on to see if there was any one group particularly that I felt super connected to so that I could routinely go back because this is all I knew. This is all I knew how, what to do. And I had the same experience personally at each of those meetings. Really wonderful people. The stories were not things that um, struck me or reflected what I felt like my experience had been, but the emotional range that people were feeling and then using alcohol to buffer really did resonate with me. So I went to a handful of meetings. That really helped me get through that day, January 24th, through to, I would say, that first 4 to 5 months. I I had not drank for that period of time other than when I was pregnant, which for me was a no-brainer to not drink while I was pregnant. Um, because I mean, I just made that decision that that wasn't an option for me and felt really strongly about that. So that was the longest stretch I had gone without cracking open a bottle of wine. And it was hard. It was hard. And I'll tell you, I had to withdraw. So that was something else I did was I withdraw a little bit from my social circles because so much of my social life was built around happy hour and let's to get together and have some drinks. So I withdrew from my social circles. And because my daughter actually had gone into the hospital at that time, she wasn't well for a couple of weeks and did an 8-day stay in the hospital. Uh, it made it easier for me to not be out and about. So after going to the meetings, um, I did pick up the little blue book and I read through it. And there were a couple of things, which is the AA book, by the way. And there were a couple things in there specifically that really spoke to me and I found helpful. So at the point that I felt like, okay, I'm starting to get a slight handle on this, I was still really angry. I was super annoyed. I felt like everybody else has this figured out. Everybody else is able to go to parties or go out for meals and have wine or beer or cocktails or whatever. And I was starting to feel really resentful that I was unable to do that. And which I didn't want to feel that feeling, right? You don't want to be like looking at everybody you love around you, feeling like, well, you guys have it all figured out, and I'm this loose cannon, and feeling annoyed with yourself. So I started being really, really mindful about when I would have the urge to drink. So that was the next thing I did. I would find myself sometimes actually standing in front of my mini fridge and like not even remembering walking over there. I didn't open anything out of it. I did still have alcohol in the house because my husband, I mean, this was my thing. My husband still occasionally was having a beer or a glass of wine or whatever. So I still had stuff in the house, but mindfulness, just paying attention to when I had that urge to drink was the next thing I did. And I was just taking note of it. And I found, really from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock was kind of my witching hour because it was such a nice part of my routine of coming home, opening wine, making dinner. And so that was the next thing I did, was just paying attention to when I was having the urges to drink. Once you identify these urges, then you have to make a decision. I read in Trevor Mosby's book, It Takes What It Takes. You can do what you choose, or you can do what you feel. But there's only one way to get the outcomes you want, and that's to do what you choose. So even though I was identifying that I was having an urge to drink, I had to intentionally make the choice to not drink. That was hard. But I really, really, really desired my outcome. I really wanted to not feel like this thing had a hold on me and that I had a hold on it. And I have to tell you, did not say to myself, this is it forever, right? I'm never going to drink again. It wasn't like some grand sweeping gesture. It was simply back to the AA meetings, like today, right now, in this moment, I'm going to choose not to drink. And then all of those little choices added up. And what was so fascinating was at the about 6 month mark, the urges became less and less and less. And what I was looking for was this energy. People talk about this magical energy that you have when you stop drinking. And in the past, when I had tried that, I didn't get that energy, that big surge of, I feel great. And so that's what always sent me back, well, this isn't working anyway, so I might as well have a drink. But the urges became less. And ultimately, the energy did start to tip the other way. So I had a little bit more energy because let's face it, if you have a bender where you've had a really good time the night before, you're just going to be kind of dragging the next day. You're not going to have the energy that you want. So the mindfulness was huge, paying attention, catching myself in the moment, feeling like, okay, I'm having the urge to drink, and then and really intentionally making a decision not to do it. I did a lot of traditional things. I journaled, I listened to podcasts, I took a walk, I would engage with my kids in some way or talk to my husband. I would call a family member or a friend and just talk through how I was feeling. I found a podcast by Brooke Castillo, Brookecastillo. And actually, I didn't find it. My friend Julie introduced it to me. Thanks, Jules. Um, and the life coach who is Brooke Castillo, and her podcast is called The Life Coach School. She had a series of podcasts called Stop Over Drinking. And there's multiple parts to it. And I'll tell you, that podcast, holy cow, that really, really stuck with me. Like what she was saying, how she was feeling, how she was going about not drinking. It was like exactly what I needed to hear right at that exact time. They're so good. I highly recommend you go check them out. And I actually shared them to my Facebook page, Michelle Magner, so people could find them easily because I'd been talking about it so much, and so people kept asking me, where is it? What podcast? So I put it on my Facebook page, Michelle Magner, 1L and Michelle. But that really helped me understand the biology of what was happening in me, and it helped me understand how important it was for me to process my feelings. Because ultimately, that was what was happening, was I was trying to avoid feeling a certain way, or I was feeling a certain way, and I was wanting to celebrate feeling that way. So listening to that series of podcasts was so incredibly helpful to me. The next thing I did was I continued to listen to her podcast and coached myself. I was going through coaching certification at the time. And so this material, the content really spoke to me as well. But having a little bit of structure for me was really helpful. So, and a platform and a place where I could talk about how I was feeling and what I was thinking, and then getting that structure around how to process emotion was so helpful for me. And Brooke talks a lot in her podcast about allowing the urge, like telling yourself that it will pass. The urge will pass. You will not be in that space where you are desiring the drink indefinitely. And it's telling your brain, we can do this. I can do this. And just allowing. And again, it sounds super basic, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. So after really diving deep into that podcast and having some coaching around it, like time just kept going and marching on without me drinking. And the 1 year came and I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that I had made it a year. And I'll tell you that I have parents that at various times in their life stopped drinking. And so my big goal was one of my parents had not drank for a year. And I was like, I want to beat it because I'm a little competitive. So for me, having that competition in my mind, it was against myself, right? Because my parent didn't even know that I was competing with their sobriety. But it worked. So I knew, well, if they did it for a year, I want to go for 2 years and just see if I can do it. And what's so interesting, what is so fascinating, everyone, is that the desire to drink completely left me. And I think that is the key. It's that I just don't desire it at all anymore. And so I kept looking for markers of time to pat myself on the back. But really, what was happening is that I was showing up in my life and I was doing it and processing it and managing it without the alcohol. And time kept going on. And I just no longer had the desire for it. I had absolutely no desire for it. It was no longer what I would go to um, process emotion. And what's really fascinating is what I felt like were these big swings and up and downs in emotion that I was having leveled out. Like the rage that I would feel, the visceral rage that I would feel sometimes that I felt required me to have a glass of wine to calm down, those really decreased significantly. I mean, it was so fascinating. It was really fascinating. So, as time kept going on, my emotional life stabilized, even through caregiving, even through kids, even through working full time, even through being in school. Um, and I kept thinking, is this, is this going to end? Like, am I going to stop feeling this way? Because once you have the taste of some goodness in your life, obviously you want to hold on to it. And I was just really happy with how things were turning out and how it was going, and I didn't want to lose it. But what was interesting was that it was fine. So I can totally go to parties. I can totally be around people that are drinking. I don't care. You do you. I have no desire for it. It's like offering me a big liver and onion sandwich or something. I have no desire to eat that. And that is how I feel about wine. And what's interesting is I have gone back. I do take like little sips here and there, or I'll drink a little 2 ounce sample once every 6 months or something. Um, and most of the time, it just is not that tasty to me. Most of the time. I loved beer too, and there are some microbrews that I think are pretty delicious, but I don't know. And once you have the alcohol out of your system and you go back and you try a little bit, it jacks your brain up. Like it really, it really messes me up. So I have no desire to continue drinking because I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to feel crummy the next day. So my invitation to you is just to go back through this podcast, listen to how I did it again, take some notes, and figure out what's going to work for you. But I have to tell you that I agree with my mentor, Brooke Castillo, that there's a richness and fullness of life that I realized I was really missing out on because I was drinking. I thought I was participating in life when I drank. And really, for me, I realized I was missing out on it. And I mean, we don't have that long here. I do a lot of work around aging and time and how we feel about aging. And we're here for such a short amount of time. I know it can feel so long, especially if you are caregiving, but I just wanted to be able to experience life fully to the fullest. And I wanted to be able to feel all the feelings, this rainbow of emotion that God planted in me to feel, and not feel like I had to drink to, quote, get through it. I don't want to get through my life. I want to thrive and flourish in it. And that is how I'm feeling. How long did it take me to get here? That first 6 months was hard because I was breaking a habit. From 6 months to a year, the resentment reduced of not being able to drink how I wanted to and how I thought other people were doing it. And I did start to have that energy. And then year one to now, I feel like my life has cracked open. I feel like um, I can get through anything and not need the alcohol and not need the glass of wine. My daughter graduated from high school, and at the same time, my father-in-law was in the hospital. And it didn't even occur to me that that would be an option for how to manage it. So I just invite you to consider what you want, what you want your life to look like, what you want your habits, your routines to look like. What do you want to desire? And just encourage you that you can do it. My gosh, if I can do it, anybody can do it, seriously. I mean, it was hard, but I did it and I'm on the other side and I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I just wanted to share more of that story with you. If you think there's anybody that would benefit from hearing this, you're welcome to forward this on to them. Happy to share with them too. I love you. You are doing a great job. You are doing a great job. I think one of the biggest things that I found with myself was not only would I beat myself up about this stuff, but then I would judge myself for beating myself up about this stuff. It was like a double 1-2 punch. No wonder I drank. So that's it. That's it for today. I hope you have a beautiful day. I love you. And again, you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. We'll talk again soon. Bye.